Дорогие коллеги,
Dear colleagues, good afternoon. We're continuing our forum and we're starting Provost session, the Rector session. You see the subject on the screens. My name is Alexander Arkhangelsky. I'm a member of the Scientific Council of the High School of Economics, but despite the fact that Yaroslav Ivanovich Kuzminov is my direct head, the positions will be equal here. My task is to look after the time, so not to allow anyone to speak for longer than all the others. I will be waving the watch at you when I see that you're going over your time limit. So I think that we'll build our work in the following way. I'd like to remind you that there are headphones with translation. Russian is Channel 1, English is Channel 2. I will briefly introduce the people. With me in the panel today, we go through 3 circles of questions in brief. What the challenges, connection to the digital revolution, and what is the future, because every new challenge provides new questions and some non-standard answers, and that is the map of assault, so to speak, what your universities and companies dealing with university problems are doing to move in this direction where you see this area. The participants of today's panel, Yaroslav Ivanovich Kuzminov, the rector of the Highest School of Economics. Please welcome him. Stefan Ludwig, one of the better-known university activists of today's world, 12 years in the Council of Colorado University, great experience into business connected with university solutions going outside university life. Please welcome him. Eduard Vladimirovich Glazhinsky, the rector of Tomsk State University, one of the brightest regional universities known across the world. Nikolai Nikolaevich Kudryavtsev, the rector of FizTech. We all know this higher education institution, member correspondent of Russian Academy of Science, Lederman, one of the founders of Inside Education. He is directly connected with digital revolution and university education and the career trajectories of our alumni. And I hope that this discussion will be productive. We'll try to leave half an hour for questions. I asked every one of you, you will have at least 3 presentations within this panel, so I'd like you to ask you to stick to the time frame. I will not allow you to go outside your time frame, but still it's good if you keep track of your own time yourselves. The first level is challenges. So when we're speaking about digitalization, first of all, we mean online education, which is a mandatory, way, not an alternative to classical education, but as a kind of mandatory thing for universities. Apart from that, what else? Artificial intelligence. Well, right now we're not speaking about a strong artificial intelligence. We're speaking about algorithms, basically, technologies of virtual simulations, and what else? And is it usable across the spectrum? Yaroslav Ivanovich, maybe you can start. Well, first of all, about the obligations. I think that it's hard to implement any technology in a mandatory way. Apart from the technology of keeping track of time, which is I'll be doing. But I think they have their own problems. Well, I think that there's no sense in trying to make anyone do something. Don't make a person swim when he's in the center of the river. If he or she wants to survive, he or she is going to swim. What style they're going to use for that is a different matter. With the implementation of new technologies, the wave of this implementation should be about, the solutions connected with the things that are not obligatory, what the universities, the chairs, specific colleagues want to do, not what they're made to do. And about the state, what the state is requiring. The state is requiring a certain quality of education. If you're providing this quality of education with the teachers that you have, the professors that you have, if you're providing this selection that this society is requesting from you, then who will or might say anything against that, that you have to do something? No one will make you do anything if you're good. Second, regarding technologies, we have online courses, are one of the simplest technological solutions out there. And there are a lot of outcomes here, but so many other things. Well, the possibilities of automation, basic routine processes, generating tasks for students and checking tasks, those routine tasks. Our key challenge here, going on in force after the first course, is losing the students' perception that someone is actually reading and analyzing their papers that they hand in, that anyone is actually interested. Now, of course, in an offline university will not depart far from that. We're looking for people who will like, and we concentrate on them, and those who fall behind, half of them, they are concentrating on just not dropping out, and the wide mass of students, they are getting used to the fact to just superficially go through many courses as a challenge, and new technologies, new digital technologies, they allow regularly to give original assignments to every student and to evaluate them. So basic feedback on every course. How to change this, we can fantasize about. Second thing is virtual simulators is one of the most perspective vectors of development. When we're speaking about simulations, we're speaking about, training fighter pilots, who was implemented 40 years ago because every mistake costs a lot. So now we have a lot of computer games. Every one of us can buy them on the internet and drive a truck, drive a fighter jet, make a amusement park, and we can use it into educational educational challenges. It's very evident. The thing is just to make the industry face the right direction in terms of the providers of content and professional communities. I think that this will increase the accessibility and how interesting it is. And a lot of times it demotivates the students when there's no competitive nature in the assignments. When there is a simulation of something, then we have an opportunity of command work, command project, and we all know what sports are, what are sports supporters, what is sport motivation. So if we take it to the universities, more than baseball teams, we will achieve a lot. And another thing is probably blockchain is verified identification of educational results, which you cannot fake, you cannot hack into, which is supported by your employers. And blockchain technologies have a lot of future for big data universities, and this is very evident thing when we see the results of all that and gather them together and make them accessible for manufacturers. We can plan educational processes and see where the interest is aimed, where it's channeled, what programs can be opened, what courses have do not enjoy a lot of interest. And it's not just about who drinks coffee with the dean and who, communicates with the rector. It's a new reality. So the framework of this new reality is very different. And this gives radical changes to university life. Thank you very much, Yaroslav Ivановich. Stefan Ludwig, I have the same question for you. So maybe one more thing in addition to that. What are the challenges in connection to the digitalization, digital revolution, but in addition to that, will the aim at online education lead to new digital inequality that universities that can produce good online universal courses will just dilute and will just subdue the small private regional universities? So is this a threat?
Taking notes. So when it comes to adopting online education and digital resources, one of the things that institutions have to get honest about that we forget is what's our mission? Why were we created? So in Russia and in Europe, there's more of a tradition of it's an academic society for the good of the academics. In the United States and in some other schools, the idea of creating something is that we came together as a society and put together this institution to serve others so that we would be better off by having more teachers and engineers and what have you, those professions, beyond studying Latin and Greek and the classics and the arts. And so while we have to adhere to our liberal arts traditions, we have to remember that we're created actually to serve others. The taxpayers of our countries support us in order that we can serve them. We do not exist to have jobs or to provide a good living for people, although we do and we should. So when it comes to adopting online educational resources, we have to get honest about our mission. Then we have to create a vision of whom are we going to serve and who are we best positioned to serve with our particular background from our particular institution or region. Who should we help? In the United States, most digital learners align with the university that's close to where they live. So that's the strength of the brand. That will change over time, but that's interesting. Then for an institution, once you are clear on your mission and vision, what are the policies that support that? I'm a policy maker at the board level, so I'm not faculty. It's the titles are different across countries, but it's that we approve the budget, we hire the senior leader at the institution, but then we provide encouragement. And then once you've decided those are the things, what are the incentives? What's the structure you need to develop in order to create these online things? So those are 4 key component parts for institutions to begin to really take this seriously. I'm passionate about we serve the public. They are not designed to serve us. And so if we are not being honest or working hard to create digital assets to get what we have to offer out to others, then I don't think we're fulfilling our mission. When it comes to inequality, there's tremendous inequality now that we don't talk about. If you don't live within a certain amount of distance of my institution, and you don't come and prostrate yourself on my campus traditionally, then you can't come and you can't get what we have access to. But now we can create these things. And it's important to have the philosophical debates about what type of education we're getting. We have to be cautious not to create a bunch of technocrats that have no soul. I'm from the United States, and we're from Russia and all over the world here, but we can have conversations about art and literature and movies because we have had that educational experience. And so we do have to be careful when it comes to that inequality, not just to teach someone how to fix a widget, and because it's more of an interconnected global economy. So that's the concern about inequality. The thing that I'm paying attention to is the tremendous growth of populations in India and China and the Middle East. There's no way those governments can afford to replicate what we've done, and that's what they're going to want to do because that's the prestige route. how can we help them through our expertise to create quality for those individuals that don't have access?
Спасибо большое за это оптимистическое выступление. И поскольку Эдуард
Thank
Владимирович,
you very much
помимо
for
того, что
this
ректор,
optimistic
еще и
presentation.
психолог,
Eduard
а
Vladimirovич
может
is
сначала
your rector,
психолог, а
apart
потом
from a
ректор,
psychologist,
то
maybe first of
ему
all
проблема
psychologist and
человеческого
then
измерения,
rector.
цифровую
So the
эпоху
problems of
наиболее близка.
human
Я
dimension, the
предоставляю вам
digital
слово,
era
какие
is
вызовы
very
здесь,
close to your
как будем
heart, and
отвечать.
what are your challenges here and how we'll answer that. So,
на мой взгляд, эпоха
thank you very much, dear friends. So the era
характерна тем, что человеческий потенциал
is
становится
very
основной
characteristic.
производительной силой и движущей силой
Characteristic is the
изменения
human
компаний,
potential as the
территорий,
main productive
государств.
force of changing companies,
Благосостояние нации
territories,
сегодня связано, собственно, с наличием таких людей,
and
наличием
the prosperity of a nation is
университетов, способных
connected with the presence of
людей,
such people and
вокруг себя
universities
концентрировать.
and
Но что
concentrating this
касается, вот я бы ответил на
knowledge.
вопросы
But in
по
terms of,
поводу технологий, мне кажется, вот я бы 4 выделил ключевых
I
момента.
would
Первый
find 4
вызов,
key
как
points
радикально
here. The
поднять
first
качество
challenge, how to
образования,
radically raise the level
используя
of
эти
education
технологии.
using those
И здесь есть два
technologies.
аспекта.
And here
Один
there are
аспект
two aspects.
связан
One
с,
aspect is
собственно, компетенциями.
connected
Тут
with
уже, в общем,
competencies,
ответы
and
очевидны.
today the
Это вот о
answers
чем Ярослав
are
Иванович
evident
сказал,
here. So what Yaroslav Ivanovich
новые
said,
тренажеры, виртуальная
new
реальность,
simulators,
это
virtual
технология
reality, adaptive content technologies. Maybe in the end I will show you a case of what we're doing now, how you use those technologies, just so that you see what I'm talking about. And in this respect, what we're doing, that the use of the virtual simulators basically double the, the way that the data is perceived, and hybrid learning also increases the perception level of the data, how it's connected with the forming persona. When a persona motivation is created in a scientific school, we were encountering the fact that only a great person can raise another great person. If we look at Nobel laureates, they were brought up in the same scientific institutions. Will we be able to take care of this issue, forming values and motivations? This is a big question now, and we're looking at that closely. So we're trying to decide by changing the structure of nuclear preparation in the bachelor's degree, providing competencies of critical... No, don't use the slide. Now I will show it later on. We can do it in 2 years instead of 4. And the second point that I would point out here is the challenge of how to use the data that we managed to collect now to raise this quality.
И здесь большие данные, здесь
Here,
анализ цифрового следа. Причем след уже мы сегодня умеем снимать не только внутри образования, но и вне, в повседневности человеческой, в социальных сетях, в лайках, моделируя его коммуникативные миры. И это, конечно, колоссальный ресурс для индивидуализации образования. И здесь тоже много экспериментов. И я, наверное, потом скажу, как мы тоже эту задачу решаем и приглашу тут коллег к сотрудничеству. Как университетам сохранить лидирующую позицию
of this
Потому
situation.
Что технологии позволяют совершенно разным игрокам сегодня
because technologies allow different players
on
the market of education to take very serious positions from Coursera, edX,
людьми, которые сегодня стихийно сюда заходят. Я был удивлен, когда, например, на одной программе личностного развития, когда мы зашли, чтобы посмотреть, так сказать, что она из себя представляет, оказалось там десяток тысяч обучающихся, которые платят сегодня деньги, обучаются, и это огромный рынок дополнительного образования, в который университет даже не понимает, как заходить в классический
market that universities just don't know how to access some aspects of the online learning market. But the fourth challenge is how to change the mentality of the educators themselves and faculty members that would be able to use those technologies to
поднимать и максимально
raise this
технологию сдвигать
quality
свою рутину
and
для того, чтобы заниматься
move their
развитием личности,
routine
творчества
towards
и самих
technology
обучающихся.
to
Спасибо.
develop
Спасибо.
personality
Презентацию, я думаю, мы посмотрим
and
на третьем круге,
creativity.
когда о конкретных планах. Да, обязательно. И у меня тот же самый вопрос о вызовах к Николаю
Thank
Николаевичу,
you.
но, может быть, чуть-чуть, опять же, вам
Thank you.
уточню
I
вопрос,
think we'll
помимо того, что вы скажете.
listen to the presentation
всегда лидировал
later.
не только в собственно-технических и
The
собственно-физических
Department of
направлениях, но это
Physics, your
был
university,
гуманитарный
has always been in the lead not only in physics, but also in humanities. You always had very good areas in humanities, so you've always remembered about
вот что происходит сегодня.
the human dimension. So today, you are getting people with this chaotic digital world. So they are not brought up in the right way. Because it's not structured, these digigal technologies. And very often, they say that we need to go back 30 to 35 years. Are you happy with the digital quality of your newcomers, or do you have to, restructure them, reshape them? What I would like to start with is that I was invited to a gala dinner by a large Western company that is operating in Russia, and there was a Russian table, so to speak, and there were two young IT professionals. Please speak closer to the mic. One was a lady and the other was a young man. So everyone wants to take them to the headquarters, to leave, Russia to go abroad. And I asked them, where did you learn all this? And they said, we learned this ourselves. And this is the most deplorable thing that a university professor can hear. Because we are getting those people who are more developed. So they have self-education and self-motivation, they know IT, they learned it by themselves. So in the first few years, we are sort of fighting with this digital illiteracy, with this neglection of ethics. We always tried to attract employers to the educational process. But even in, novices and the sophomore students, even we managed to get them in touch with their potential employers. Because there are a lot of attractive jobs around, and sometimes the employers say, okay, well, we'll just announce the salaries and they will come to us anyway. But this is not the way it works. The number of talented students, the best of the best, well, there are very few of those, about 20,000. So it's a fixed value, sort of. So it turned out that it is more profitable to invest in education than to get those who need to be re-educated. So if you walk this path, then you will be successful. So we are trying our best to fix these errors and to get real diamonds in the end. I have the same question for Doug Lederman about challenges, about the challenges that we're facing. Well, the platform that you've founded, I mean, it's really broad. You take a broad perspective of things. So today we're speaking about universities changing their structure, but at the same time, the world is entering the area of counter-revolution. So we see the situation with universities in Turkey. We see the problems here in the Soviet Union, in the former Soviet Union. So if we place our bet on total digitalization, can it lead to fewer applicants and fewer people just studying humanities?
So I'm the odd man out up here because I'm not a rector. I'm not a university leader in any way. I'm a journalist, and because of that role, I talk to many rectors and many university leaders. So I think I think the expectation is that I'll bring sort of a broad perspective. And what's fascinating being here is that while I'm primarily focused on what's happening in the United States, the problems are common pretty much around the world. In the US, there is a very serious questioning of the value of universities and of college and university credentials. There are a whole bunch of factors related to that. Some are economic, some are demographic. But the bottom line is that people are really questioning whether getting a university degree is worth it. And I think that poses a very significant challenge to American higher education, and probably what's happening in the US is probably not far behind for the rest of the world. And part of what we're seeing in this is that we're seeing higher education primarily defined or increasingly defined by job outcomes, by whether a degree or a credential leads to a job, a career, and to a good income. And that's always been a very important part of what a higher education delivers or is supposed to deliver. But it's at a time when people are trying to measure and understand what value a degree brings, those are the easy things to measure, or easier things to measure. You can look at how much they earn 1 year, or 5 years, or 10 years out of college, out of university. But the danger is that if we let a post-secondary or tertiary credential be defined exclusively, or even, I would say, primarily by economic outcomes, there is, as you said, something very greatly at risk to be lost. I won't speak to, I don't love to talk about politics, but it's very difficult to look at what's happening in the US and not see a real coarsening, lowering of the quality of communication, quality of understanding, quality of community, and those are all things that a university degree, university education is supposed to provide. And the more we let higher education be equated exclusively, or even I would say most heavily by economic outcomes. While those are important, my children just graduated from university in the last few years, and I very much wanted them to be able to get a job and a good career. But especially, at least in the United States, where post-secondary education has always been about preparing people for a life, not just for work, if we let it be narrowed too much in terms of how we define success, there is danger of sort of for society as a whole.
Спасибо вам за вашу позицию, ваше высказывание.
Thank you very much. So we are done with the first round of our talk. Now let's speak about the prospects. What are the prospects for university education now that we have digital revolution going on? And how much is it going to cost, because we have to pay for everything? So what prospects does it open for your university? It is a question for the university presidents and for the supervisory board members who should provide these resources, the government, parents, students. What should be the algorithm for making this breakthrough? And I would like to call on Nikolai Nikolaevich Kudravtsev. Over to you. The floor is now yours. For us, what we see we see a lot of prospects in digitalization. And if we look at the job market, there are many areas, many jobs which do not require a lot of competencies. But the goals that we've set the goals that we've set are very ambitious, and so there is a lot of demand for IT technologies. If we look at the rest of the world, artificial intelligence and digitalization will change our lives. Many professions will disappear. But there is hope that we're going to get rid of, routine jobs, and labor will become more attractive and creative. So it all puts a footprint on our work, on what we are doing. So we must use digital technologies to make their full advantage, because they allow us to work rapidly, to work to get a very wide coverage. So they're making it really effective. So they are changing the technology of our educational process. Yaroslav Ivanovich came up with very wise words when he said that if you force somebody to study something, then it doesn't go well. But the younger generation that we have now, all those parts related to digitalization, they're very receptive of those, because they grew up that way and they need to use it to its full extent. And now that we have issues on financing this, well, the government must step in. We can have calls for bids. We can spend money on developing different courses. So there are many sponsors that we have who are our former graduates. Now they are affluent businessmen, for whom, it is something that's part of them. So they are willing to invest in innovations, in digitalization, so that they, see this as a reflection of the new trends that they see as promising. I have a question for you, Nikolai Ivanovich. The thing is that any reforms, including digital ones, lead to expenses that are not only monetary but also human-related. We need new faculty, new strategies. What are you going to do in this respect, and what are you doing in this regard now? Well, the other side of the coin here is that the universities need to determine what they need to do themselves. We are having very active discussions on this because this benchmark, this technological benchmark, it led to a new understanding of who we are and where we're going. Globally speaking, each university is trying to find its model of self-identity. So it is an important challenge and an important prospect. Some universities choose strategies of entrepreneurial, related universities. Some universities are becoming niche educational establishments. So this cultural paradigm has been destroyed. We've broken away from this paradigm. So what we're thinking about is what is happening to the idea of classical education in our culture. And we're making our choices, and it is evident for us that this opportunity, that most of the opportunity lies in the development of personality, so that we come to the idea of trans fashion, not pro-fashion. Because the key today is the ability of a human being to master its potential, to get in-depth training, but also to be able to live separately from it, to change its profession and to shape his or her life in a creative way. I think it is easier for me to think about it in such terms because I'm a psychologist. And secondly, technologies allow us to find applicants more effectively. I will show you how we do this in the third circle. And I will tell you how technologies make it possible for us to do it much more effectively. And we can focus our teachers on something more creative, but we need to establish a certain culture in our universities. We need to motivate our faculty to upgrade their technologies, their teaching materials and such. So it needs to be autonomous, like independent. So it is important for us to build up this teaching community. And last but not least, speaking about resources, it is very capital intensive. We know that the Newton platform that deals with adaptive content, and the University of Arizona is a consumer of this content. I think that the University of Arizona pays about $150 per student. So there are tens of millions of dollars that are spent on this. Well, in Russia, much less capital is required, so we're doing a project with the company called NBC. So we are trying to set up a platform that will consume 10 times less resources, but it will overcome Newton in terms of its functionality. There are no leaders today who are so far ahead, too far ahead. We saw what the University of Arizona is doing. You know, adaptive content, their math students are doing, better. But now that we know this, we can think about how to make it better, how to take a step forward, and to, take the lead, to become leaders in technologies.
My question is to Doug Lederman, maybe clarify not only on the perspectives of the digital revolution opening for university systems, but about which discussions in media connected to education are going on, what are the key media outlets writing about education, and your publication, among others.
So we have seen, again, especially in the United States, but I think around the world, we're seeing a lot more attention paid by media to the world of higher education. And that's partly because of the connection that I was talking about before, in terms of people are asking much harder questions about the value of higher education and the applicability to a job. And as a result, we're seeing new publications crop up. Our publication's about 15 years old. We were digital only, and we emerged because of this thirst for information about sort of what's happening within the walls of higher education institutions. In the United States, we're seeing lots of publications that are traditional publications expand their coverage of higher education. Around the world, we just saw, we've seen a proposal for Elsevier, the big publishing company, to buy Times Higher Education, which is a British publication that covers higher education in large parts of the world, to spend £100 million on 100 million pounds for Times Higher Education, which shows deep interest in the publication of higher education, but also its ranking system. And that's one of the sort of unfortunate trends, is that I know there's a lot of interest around the world and among institutional leaders in rankings. At least in the United States, rankings don't necessarily encourage the best behaviors by universities. And by university, they don't necessarily help university leaders emphasize the right things in their institutions. They tend to favor research, they tend to favor wealth, and they don't necessarily favor the things that society most needs from institutions, which are educating the masses. And there's an eternal tension in almost every country between creating excellent universities that can be research powerhouses, and as well as institutions that also do the heavy lifting of educating the many individuals that need sort of a fully rounded education for work and life. And it's very difficult for countries to do both of those, especially going back to the question you started with about the funding. Many countries increasingly struggle to afford higher education. We have seen very much a cost shift in the United States from government funding to individual funding. The US was sort of massification of higher education, providing education to the broad populace is very expensive. And many countries, higher education has been something for the elite. And I think most of the world has woken up to the idea that that can't be the case anymore. And yet it's very difficult to educate the broad population. It's very expensive, and there are enormously differing needs of students at different levels of training. So, I mean, these are a knotty set of issues that we're talking about here, a difficult set of challenges. There is one of the promises of digital education is that it can and I say can, not does, necessarily lower the cost of providing that education. But at least in the United States, it hasn't historically lowered the price of education for the individual. That is just starting to happen, but we're sort of early in that process. What it can do is lower the cost per student of providing an education by the cost by the institution, the cost borne by the institution. But as I said, so far we haven't seen that in general translate into lower prices for the individual who's consuming the education, which again in the United States is mostly the individual increasingly. Obviously in a lot of countries where the government picks up more of the share of what the cost is, there's also a need to drive down that cost. But that is mostly theoretical at this point, not realized.
Спасибо. Стефан Людвиг, у меня вопрос применительно к Колорадскому университету.
I have a question about Colorado University, a giant university. What are the perspectives and how much it will cost for the next 5 years? And where is this money going to be coming from businesses, from sponsors, from the state?
Great, thank you. You know what I'm most interested in right now is what can I say to you to get you off your phones? Right? So part of the challenge we have is how do we keep attention going on important topics when we are all distracted? So that was actually what was on my mind. And it's nothing wrong, I'd be doing the same thing, but it's interesting, like what can get through to us that gives us a sense of urgency that what we're not talking about is how to get someone a $5 more an hour job, but we're actually in the business of transforming lives. So you talk about what are the prospects for institutions. We heard earlier today, there's 100 million more people that need a higher education in the world between 2009 and 2025. If that's not inspiring, or if that doesn't scare the absolute bejesus out of you, I'm sure that doesn't translate, sorry, then I don't know what is. If that's not a prospect. So in my state, we have people that are undereducated. We have people that didn't complete college. We have minorities that are not achieving as much as the majority population, and that causes social instability. How do we use online not to create a two-tier system, but create a system that can help close some of these gaps? And how, as academics, do we actually create a sense of urgency into what we are doing? Rather than worrying about how do I get published, how do I get tenure, important things, but as leaders, how do we begin to say, look, our world needs us because our business is transforming lives. Now, who pays? There's a number of things. We're a big institution. We have a $4.5 billion budget. As a region, I said with my colleagues, we're setting aside $20 million to invest in these things, and if you need more money, let us know, we'll go find it. But that's very narrow, that's one institution. Why is no one talking about partnerships with philanthropies that have billions of dollars? So if you have a special need and you're part of the world and you're part of the region you serve, that you need outside resources, why are we not talking to non-government organizations to say, how can we cooperate? And speaking of mobile phones, how many people are actually using it, some or part of their education, and they're doing it on their mobile? That creates great opportunity. So I'm a bit of an evangelist about online because I love what we do in higher education and I want more people to get what we have to offer.
Количество людей достигало того, что мы хотим предлагать.
И вам удалось оторвать от мобильных телефонов значительную часть зала, кроме профессиональных мультимедийщиков.
You were successful to distract most of the people from their mobile phones, apart from professional multimedia, people who live in two realities. Yaroslav Ivановich, floor to you, higher School of Economics and the prospects connected to digital revolution. First of all, a couple of general words. I will join with my ideas what my colleagues were speaking about. has education become cheaper when the Gutenberg Revolution took place? Let's ask ourselves this question. If we take the share of the GDP that countries were spending on education, it's clear that it became several times higher. I think that the tendency to grow in the share of education in the general economy, it will continue, despite digital revolution. Second point. The main effect from digital technologies at universities, same as in school, it's not making the process cheaper. The process is changing, and we are achieving results that we couldn't previously achieve. To apply this to schools, this is decreasing the share of those that drop out by a factor of 2. We'll speak about higher education. It's a more deeper level. It's a deeper level of mastering analytical and professional competencies, departing from just superficial studying of the course to studying at least the basis of the course. The effects of that should be substantial. But this will be shown in the growth of human capital that will happen for the people that graduated from universities, that they will be making more money, they will be more adaptive, they will be more ambitious. So universities will work with a higher coefficient. Will that be cheaper or more expensive? It depends on a lot of forces from that finance education. About high school of economics now. Well, what we're expecting from this digital revolution in the near future, first of all, it's a mass introduction of online courses as a mandatory element into the base program. So there is a discussion if they will replace lectures, classical lectures, when people have to retell the basic stuff that they see in textbooks. That will be replaced. We're not looking at replacing the lecturer. We're not going to save money on what we're doing. We're trying to raise the bar, raise the level of perception of material by the people that come to meet their professor. So, if this person has already gone through an online course or half of it, depending on the curriculum, so meeting a live bearer of these competencies will be completely different, will result in completely different type of communication between savvy people, and it will be more interesting to ask questions for the students and to answer those questions for the professors. So this will lead to a level of creativity that a lot of people are lacking at universities, and why people are just losing interest about higher education. So first thing that we're expecting for ourselves is the mass implementation of online courses as a mandatory element of base courses, from a third to half of the courses. Second is expanding the scale, drastically expanding the scale of our university. Now we have 40,000 students and about 1 million students of online platforms for HEC. This process that one university has like a kernel of offline students and a big cloud of students and learners, changes the economic model of the university. I'm like to stress it, even the economic model, not, let alone the content model. So what does it mean if a person has 20,000 students that are going through, if a professor has 20,000 students going through his online course, if you have 200, 300 teachers and professors in different countries that follow up or doing seminars according to his online course, he should support it. So there's a new type of teaching. The leading professors or groups of educators supporting those online courses, and there will be a group of people who are supporting contacts, that are supporting contacts, moderating forums, because one person cannot be communicating with 100,000 people, so that person will grow with the, like in the 19th century it was the chair growing around professors. Right now the professors that are authors of acute online courses, they will get, apart from the assistants at the university, colleagues that are working with remote learners and supporting educators from remote learners. What it can be economically, well, we have studied it for leading universities, and its audience, well, say, it will be 100,000 people for international market, or 200,000 people on the Russian market, whatever. It's additional income of several 100 million rubles a month, several $1 million a month. So it's not saying that we'll not be making our second budget of the university with online courses. It's not a big chunk of cash. It's a growing segment. We're getting dozen millions of rubles, we'll be getting hundreds of millions of rubles, but it is not going to turn the economics of a university upside down. It's just an something additional. Second thing that we're expecting is evident, it's different forms of implementing digital augmentations to the educational process, such as simulations, games, etc. It's aimed at what online courses aimed at additional motivators and strengtheners, very important elements. And third is the online system that allows to save on generating tasks, checking those. So those are the key components, so key outcomes, and I hope that we will have a university that will develop its creative kernel and that allows opportunities for hundreds of new young colleagues to participate in the work of the professors. So it's a university that broadens its professional influence to dozens of partnership universities working along those partnership programs. So let's not forget that too. Thank you very much, Yaroslav Ivanovich. As a professor, I was applying this all to myself and how my life will change, what new competencies I will have to have, and am I willing to get those competencies. So we'll have to weigh it, and it will be a very difficult task for every one of us. So if we step into this era, that means we should step into it, but think about prospects, determining challenges, and this is one thing. Another thing is making specific decisions. When the evolution is taking, we can be taking not revolutionary but evolutionary decision. editing something, changing a little bit, but at some point if a digital revolution happens, managerial decisions should be also revolutionary. We will need to change the structure of management, of education, etc. And maybe we are ready for the presentation that Eduard Vladimirovich wanted to present. So let's give the floor to him.